Okay, Bryn, I'm recording this. I just want you, if you could, just read this for me.
All right, let's see. Oh, hi, this is Bryn. Just wanted to say sorry the first 10 minutes of the show sound like shit because Brian fucked it up. But don't worry, the very special interview sounds normal. Thanks, bye.
Perfect, thanks.
I wonder who that is.
Hi, Brian.
Oh, hi, Greg.
Maybe you've noticed the bindle stick on my shoulder. And the holes in my shoes.
It looks like you fought on hard times, Greg.
Well, you may know I've during the pandemic I got boat pilled and started doing some work on my boat. It's taken a turn.
Oh.
To just sum it up, listen, I sank it to the bottom of the canal. It's also now a Superfund site. It is toxic, unlivable. I have trouble thinking of it as a home anymore, and I live with you now.
Greg, I think what you're looking for is permission to come aboard. And you know what, Greg? Permission granted.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Bryn.
Welcome back to the Seattle Sucks podcast about the city that we live in. Greg no longer lives in
quarantine.
Yeah, Greg no longer lives in the city of Seattle. He now lives in the city of Shoreline.
Oh, that's the worst part.
Greg, welcome to the SS Brian and Bryn. It feels like they should have changed that SS part after historical things.
Steamship, but whatever.
Does it really?
Yes.
What do they call boats now?
Days ago, I lived on SV9.
What's the V for?
Sailing vessel.
Oh my god. All right. Anyways, so
through, it wasn't even the pandemic, wasn't anything else, just my own idiocy and negligence. I have made myself nearly homeless, but because I have a community and dear friends to rely on, I am not out on the street. I now live with Bryn and Brian forever. I am the house guest that never gets old.
Yeah, I mean, we adopted a cat. Why can't we adopt a human?
Just as confusing and stupid.
We adopted the cat, and the cat was 15, which is very old for a cat, and so likewise, our human is old as well. I don't want to start at the beginning. I want a human that's already housebroken.
Yeah, someone who's already been damaged by their real parents.
Yeah, exactly. I can't talk about parental trauma with a child I raised, right? Well, on today's show, we're going to have a guest interview, which we'll get into in a minute, with Evelyn Chow, who works with Real Change and does activism around homelessness and works with the Pacific Rim. Help me out, Greg.
Pacific Rim Solidarity Network and Chinatown International District Coalition.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the homeless sweeps, which, shock of all shocks, have continued.
Continued and almost maybe escalated because go figure, the housing crisis has continued to escalate. Today, this is Thursday, so yesterday and this morning there were big sweeps in the UD, and a lot of people were out there witnessing and documenting that. This morning, our guest was among them. Yeah,
and I mean, part of the escalation too, I think, is also that we have a police department that's extremely bored, and that's a big part of it as well. Now, Greg, the other day I went into QFC. All right. And
we're out of cube steak.
yes, no. This was not that kind of crisis. The last time, actually, you know what? I bought cube steak there
So this was not a real crisis.
yeah, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I bought cube steak from QFC.
Not a joke.
Not a joke. I bought cube steak. I cooked it up.
He actually bought me cube steak.
Oh yeah. And I actually
Stick fingers?
no, I made chicken fried steak because a friend of the show, Maddie, had not ever had chicken fried steak before, which is a real crime. So,
Nice. Yeah.
so I made her chicken fried steak. But the thing is that I got the cube steak. I came back. I let everybody know we have no shoplifters at our QFC because the cube steak was a giant pile, almost as if nobody had touched it in years.
Chicken fried steak is the filet mignon of the diner.
Mhm. Mhm.
If a diner has a good chicken fried steak, that's a good diner. Because usually it's absolutely dog shit.
Well, and the two uses of cube steak in Texas, at least, which is the only way I know what cube steak is chicken fried.
anything.
Yeah, chicken fried steak, steak fingers, which is the exact same thing as chicken fried steak. And then the other one is Salisbury steak.
Oh, Salisbury
that
steak.
king of the cafeteria lunch, which I've never personally made, but I have
You're
eaten
like,
plenty of.
Yeah,
in
I
school.
only ate that because it's what they were serving at a cafeteria. Dude, I ate that growing up because someone chose to buy a frozen version of it and feed it to me. regularly.
Yes,
Just chose to buy the frozen Salisbury steak. And, I was telling you about my eating habits growing up, I had forgotten about Salisbury steak until just now. Hadn't thought about that as a food item in 20 years. I remembered the shit on a shingle and the hamburger helper and the Taco Bell. Great. Salisbury steak.
And Greg is gonna be shocked to hear this because we're face to face right now. He's staring directly at me.
We're kissing.
Yep, we're kissing. And what Greg's noticing as he embraces me is that I am rail thin. Like a gust of wind could just blow me right out of here. Just, rail thin. But I was very enthusiastic about actually most of the cafeteria food that we had in school. As a kid who never had his own lunch or whatever, I always got from the cafeteria.
Oh, yeah, I never.
And the funniest part about Salisbury steak is somebody who was enthusiastic about all the other shit they fed us. Salisbury steak was always like, it wasn't necessarily bad, but it's just one of those things that Salisbury steak day.
I tell you what, I was also the kid, first of all. Yes, always, never, no lunch was ever packed for me ever.
Yeah.
But I also liked all the cafeteria food.
Yeah, like I feel like
especially not necessarily like some of it's just like whatever. It's like it's a corn dog, or whatever.
Mhm.
But specifically the meals that everyone else was like, all the other 10 kids in the class who had to buy their lunch, were like, not turkey gravy. It looks like barf, and I'm like, give me that turkey gravy.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I would try to think if there was any one of them that I didn't like. I think Salisbury steak was basically the only one that was like I was still fine with it, but it was just one of those things where it's like it's not taco salad, it's not fish sandwiches.
Elementary cafeteria Salisbury steak isn't cube steak. It's just
no.
It's a hamburger.
Yeah, and even that, it's that weird like pushed together meat that's like 50% meat and 50% other products, right? Because you would also get that hamburger, which was made out of the same shit.
It was the same.
Yeah, and it never tasted like any hamburger you ever had in your life. Right? Like, it didn't taste like beef. It didn't taste like, who fucking knows what was in that. But I liked it. And I think as a kid, I appreciate it on a level different than a regular hamburger. I just consider it a different food item. I was like, I appreciate hamburgers and I appreciate this thing you just handed me. But that wasn't the point of where I was going. So the QFC by right here by my house, right? I was there. I'm doing my self-checkout, right? And there is an altercation at one of the check stands between a guy who doesn't have shoes on because, according to him, his shoes were taken. And it escalates whenever he's thrown out. Now, this has been I don't know if this is just me or if this is just something I'm just noticing now, but I swear for the last month, this has been like an escalating situation at grocery stores here, where I've just seen people get tossed out almost uniformly. People who seem to be at least either homeless or like on the verge, like in that arena at least. And I don't know if we just are all psychically taking out our stress on homeless people. Have you seen this? Like I feel like I've seen more people banned from QFC in the last month than I have in the previous 16 years I've lived here.
Well, that's not surprising at all. I mean, we're gonna take that's on every level. We are going to take this all out on the most marginalized people, and we've never had so many fucking people working the doors at a grocery store before now. Right now, there's 1 or 2 people at every door on a grocery store, plus a security guard.
Yeah.
Looking for people with masks and managing a line at places where they're doing that.
Yeah.
So I have not personally seen that. But I don't know.
Maybe our listeners, if this has happened to you, but yeah, our QFC also has replaced the Real Change vendor with, now we have a giant tower with cameras in it in the parking lot and stuff. And part of it is I definitely feel for the workers at the grocery store, because man, people treat them like shit. Oh, yeah. And if anybody's ever needed to just go on strike, I feel like every time I go in there, I just want to lean into their ear and be like, go on strike. Yeah. Fuck us, go on strike. Yeah. But I feel like, we're all in this stressful situation, and it's got to go somewhere, and it's just being sort of directed. And it's and I worry for when in 25 years when the quarantine is lifted, what's going to happen, right? Yeah. It's just going to keep going, right? Yeah. I feel like the camera tower is not going away now that it's there.
Well, yeah.
But
I know, there's video from some states and some companies that are being really strict about the mask policy now, and you're crazy boomer right-wing psychopaths stirring up shit about it. I would bet that overall, first of all, I haven't seen any stores here enforcing a mask policy yet.
No, they don't.
Despite the fact that the county now is saying that everywhere needs to do that.
They put very polite notices on the door, and that's as far as it goes. Yeah.
But I want to bet that if you are white and middle class looking, I bet you can walk into a store without a mask that someone who looks down on their luck or is not white can get stopped for and told to leave,
Yeah, I mean, in typical fashion, any regulation, any law, whatever, no matter how well-intentioned, is always going to be, enforced unevenly,
it's going to fall into the system where it fits in very nicely in a system where actually everything is illegal. Yeah. And that is used to target the most marginalized people. And, when you make a few more things illegal, the system of enforcement of that is just gonna default to that.
Well, and I felt bad for this guy at the QFC, right? Because he's probably right. Somebody probably did take his shoes, right? That's probably why he didn't have them. At the same time, what's he supposed to do? And it's 2 people who are very fried at this moment, who are sort of
both relatively, both powerless in this.
Yeah, neither has the ability to actually affect anything in the situation other than to essentially attack each other. But it's I don't know. It's just this thing that I've sort of noticed, and it's I am concerned for this post quarantine, right? I feel like we're gonna be much more policed post quarantine than we were prior. Yeah.
Great.
Well, great. That sounds awesome. Glad to hear it. Should we kick it to our very good interview with the very awesome Evelyn Chow?
Yeah. Listen to this, everybody.
Okay. Hey, as promised, we're here with Evelyn Chow. They're an organizer at Real Change News. Also was out at 12th and Weller in the ID this morning during the big sweep, live streaming that as part of their work with Pacific Rim Solidarity Network and Chinatown International District Coalition. Thank you so much for coming on with us, Evelyn.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being out there this morning representing the community.
Yeah, of course.
So I got a lot of questions for you. I just want to maybe catch people up on the basics. So let's see. To start, CDC has recommended halting encampment removals during this pandemic. Obviously a thing we'd like to see happen generally, but that's from the CDC. City of Seattle has announced that an order, I think goes back to, I believe, March 15th, an order to halt encampment removals, though we've learned already before today and yesterday that there are apparently several loopholes that apply to that. We're probably going to be talking about the navigation team in this conversation, and what that has been sort of intended to mean over the last few years is a group of social workers who are supposedly intended to connect people with services like beds, such as they exist, and other assistance, and are happen to be backed up by cops. That'll be an interesting detail to talk about today's action. We also know there was another large sweep yesterday. Was it in Pioneer Square? Am I right about that?
No, yesterday's one was also in the ID. It was on 8th and King.
8th and King. Okay.
Yeah, under the freeway overpass.
Got it. And this isn't the first sweep since the stop order from the city on March 15th. So some things we know about today's big sweep just from watching social media from you and other people in the community and other local journalists who were there. Sounds like this is a big encampment, over 50 tents, and matched by something like 50 cops, it sounds like. Maybe just tell us what brought you there. Maybe tell us a little bit about Pacific Rim Solidarity Network and Chinatown International District Coalition.
Totally. Yeah. You set the scene really well. So the city has been conducting a lot of these really large sweeps recently. And today's was along Weller Street from 12th to Rainier. The sweep was set to begin at 9 a.m. We've had community members show up from 7:30. And at that point, there are already cops convening about the 50, and they had their briefing, and the sweep pretty much officially started around 8 o'clock.
Okay.
And so kind of what brought me there, I guess, my work at Real Change for sure it's always been, sweeps are on my radar, but more importantly, like with the work that that Parasol and the CID Coalition do. So the Pacific Rim Solidarity Network, it's a group of radical leftist, Chinese diasporic, like Hong Kong, Taiwanese people. They do a lot of different work in the community. Most recently, they've been a large part of coordinating the mutual aid efforts in the region. And then the CID Coalition formed out of efforts to stand in solidarity and actively fight the displacement and gentrification that's happening in the Chinatown International District. And so, all of these different areas of work just kind of intersected for me today and yesterday. And so, we know the sweeps have been going on for years. And so, that's what brought me there today.
Yeah, thank you again for being there to broadcast this and show the wider community what's going on. Maybe tell just we kind of set the scene. I mentioned there was it was a big encampment. You said several blocks of the street there, maybe 50 tents or so. Like what else was going on? Like what stood out to you? And I've sort of got some facts I can drop here that I've learned from social media, but like what's the story to you this morning?
The story, I think like the biggest thing was just like how heinous all of it was, there's so many details to hone in on. I think, the fact that we consistently, as in like all of the community members who were showing up, were trying to ask like, what is like the exact amount of residents, in this encampment area? Where are they being directed to? Like which shelters? Do you know if you have enough beds? At the same time, there are so many reasons folks don't want to go into shelters, especially right now, knowing that there aren't de-intensifying measures being taken at some of them.
Yeah.
And then also just the complete lack of, awareness on the cops' end that they were violating not only the CDC guidelines saying not to sweep unless there are individual housing units available, but at the same time just not wearing their own masks,
Incredible.
So, I think in several of the live streams you can see, I know Nikita live streamed on her Facebook. A lot of reporting happened from Chrissy and Day on Twitter. You can check my Instagram live stream out as well. Like incessantly, community members were being like, "We have masks. We were asked to bring masks, and we're going to freely distribute them to everyone, including the cops, being like, please put them on." And they just completely ignored us and walked away, just hid behind their little barricade.
Yeah, well, I think it shows, with the police or their general just disregard for human safety and things like that. I mean, there was one of the police officers was caught in the photos on Twitter, the impossibly named Officer Coomer, just sitting there without his goddamn mask on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also shows the sort of divide as far as, police and the, population they service, right? In the sense that the police live in this sort of far right bubble, right? And so what a shock they're not wearing masks. I mean, they're like the guys who they're the same as the guys who are protesting at the Capitol today with Ayman.
Oh my God.
And it's also just their again a statement of their just general disregard for the safety of anybody around them.
I mean, it's clearly like that it is going around in sort of the right-wing spheres, this sort of rebellion against the mask or something. And obviously, we know that is where the cops live ideologically. And they also happen to be among the dumbest people alive. So you put those two things together, and I've seen the photos and the streams, like most of them were not wearing masks. Seems like the bike cops all like got together and were like, we're going to be cool and wear our masks as part of our gear. But like the rest of them, those are the guys that kind of makes sense. Those are guys who like hit the gym, like health conscious, those are the real, like, they're like the frontline warriors, but the rest of them, just the hot dog necked slobs were just totally maskless.
Well, it may be, I mean, Greg, you just remind me a possible other irony here is that if you're ever at like any of the Black Lives Matter events or been at any of the Seattle May Days, you know that when the police go to descend on a crowd and they want to intimidate, right, and they got their Darth Vader gear on, they all wear masks, right? Because when it's cool and you're cosplaying, you want to wear the mask. But now I guess it's it's too soy for them or something, so they don't want to do it.
Well, I mean, they live every day wanting to be in a dangerous situation that
they start
them. No, exactly. Like they're on a hair trigger looking for a dangerous. This is the cop mentality. I mean, we're talking. This is like days after SPD murdered someone in a. And I've this is a whole other story. We don't need to get into. And but it's one of these classic situations where in the moment that the cop shot this man with a knife, that cop's life was in danger because he had put himself 3.5 feet. He was running full speed 3.5 feet behind a guy with a knife screaming at him. And so when he turns around, they do this. They live to put themselves in these dangerous situations. So I think their wires have gotten crossed on the mask thing. And like, they're like, we gotta put ourselves in this dangerous situation because that's sort of what we live for and it's fun. Anyway, we could psychoanalyze these, the pigs all day, but there were a lot of cops. We know that. You saw that. Tell me about the number of navigation team social workers you saw out there today.
So it took us a very, very long time to get any sort of information on whether or not there were social workers or members of the outreach or navigation team there. I met personally one, don't remember his name, but he was an asshole. And then I know Day got a chance to talk to another person who was like the head of the navigation team department.
I saw this video.
It was awful. But as for actual social workers who were doing work with the residents of that encampment, they didn't let anyone in. There were folks from Reach who were initially in before they built up that whole that barricade, and then they were forced out. And then we also had folks from Wellspring show up, who also, offered services to folks like the people who were holding the line at the barricade, the cops, and they also denied entry. I was there on behalf of Real Change, still no entry. So basically there were 0 social workers on site throughout the duration of the sweep.
But before the whole thing started, other social work organizations, aid organizations, not with the city, were there to provide services who were then kicked out by the cops.
To my understanding, yeah. So the one person from the navigation team I did talk to, the only person who basically answered any question for me that day today, I was like, have these folks been offered shelter? If so, like where? And And he said, yeah, we've been offering them every day. And I was like, okay, well, why haven't they taken it? Again, there are so many reasons people won't take shelter right now.
Yeah.
And then when I asked for specific numbers, like how many shelter beds are available today, there were no answers given. And then they walked away. So
yeah, and so Day and Chrissy from activist class, threw up a video of talking to this guy from the health department or whatever, the services department, asking about 75 times, like, so how many beds are available right now? Like a kind of a basic thing you might know if this was any kind of organized effort to help anyone.
If you intended to put these people in shelter, you would know this.
You might have some vague idea. You might have some preparation on this. To know that is not even like, and you just constantly refused to answer, directing them to the blog, which is hilarious. Totally deflecting. Also not letting them in as journalists. Which that's a whole nother piece of this. They're letting in like the corporate media, but not
Times,
local journalists.
Fox, not International Examiner, not them. It's just
and it's so hard to even, the like you were saying, there's so many reasons why someone wouldn't even take a bed if it was, and this what makes this. There's so many layers of bullshit to the way the city, I mean, it's broader than the city, but the city pretends to deal with this problem, because when you start, even in the act of confronting the city or a representative of the city on the issue of the number of beds available, like it's a key thing, and it's like really like telling that that couldn't be answered, and they didn't seem to know or care. But the number of beds available is kind of ultimately a meaningless thing, really, because you're talking about emergency shelter beds, which are places that, I mean, well, you're in this, you're involved in reaching out to these communities. I mean, tell us about all the reasons that a supposed emergency shelter bed might not be the right answer for you, even before this pandemic, and then certainly now.
Yeah, I mean, where do I begin? So I mean, even before this global pandemic was happening, we already know that hygiene conditions in a lot of basic shelters just aren't being met, and not to any fault of the people who work there. Obviously, it's just that social services are extremely under-resourced, and so we have reports of our vendors at Real Change, getting bed bugs, other sorts of like diseases, colds spreading really quickly in these very packed areas. And a lot of the other reasons too is just like, a lot of barriers, a lot of shelters claim to be, low barrier, but then still require things like, for example, sobriety, like tests daily, which is really ridiculous. And then, even just like things
demeaning.
Like very, and then even things just like requiring ID, like, we have the footage, people know, like when you're in like transient housing situations, like it's not that simple to just hold on to your identification all the time, and it's even more
people are throwing away your fucking belongings all the time.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's exacerbated right now. Like government offices aren't even open for folks to be getting new IDs in the first place. Not to mention just how expensive it is every single time you have to do it. And so, there's just so many reasons.
And ultimately, there's a lot of different types of shelters, but a lot of them, it's basically more or less like if they existed in some kind of situation that was intended to actually help people or solve a problem, the types of shelters we have would be like, oh shit, I just lost my housing to this afternoon. I just need a place to be tonight. And that's the most important problem in my life, because all they're really offering is a cot in a large room full of cots where you have this giant list of things you can't do or be. And like, you can't bring all your belongings with you. You can bring, a backpack maybe, and the clothes on your body.
No family members. Yeah. No pets, no children.
Again, like maybe something like that could be useful to certain numbers of people in like as part of a larger system of a safety net. But it's, as it exists now, it seems like it's basically just a PR screen, like something you can say that is happening, that even that is not even happening, because as we saw, like they're not even necessarily conscious of how many beds are available. And we know that there've never in no time have there ever been enough beds to house the people on the street, much less, or even the people they're clearing out. another feature of the sort of navigation team saga has been even when it is when the social workers are there supposedly connecting people with services, one of the sort of most bizarre and cruel things, right, is the tendency for people to lose all the belongings they have in the world because they get thrown away. Sometimes we know in the past they have been boxed up in a truck, taken to some kind of storage facility, which is the beginning of what I can only imagine is the most insane Kafkaesque, like bizarre, like trip to go on to get like your personal belongings that you were standing next to when they were put in a truck for some reason that had to go away, and now you have to like get paperwork. That already, again, it's like every layer of this already an absolutely insane and cruel thing. Tell us about what was happening today.
Yeah, so today, we know that the navigation team loves to tout how they have like their whole storage system. We just know from experience that is literally not the case most of the time, that they actually have those available. So today we waited for myself at least like 2.5 hours, as they were saying that there would be some sort of storage truck, and there was not. Instead, there was just a standard garbage truck that arrived, and they did a round up the east half of Weller Street and then the west, and then they just threw all of the tents into the garbage truck with the mattresses, with everyone's belongings in it. That was the visual there.
And so when you're in a situation where you're homeless and, an armed agent of the state shows up, takes all your possessions in the world and throws them into a dumpster, and then tells you have to go away or else we're going to put you in a steel cage or murder you, that improves your life, right?
Yeah, no, I love I think they love being terrorized.
Yeah. It's an astonishing thing. And they take everything that somebody has and throw it away, essentially, right? And then when they go to the shelter, then to complain, well, why don't you have an ID? Why don't you have it? It is, Kafkaesque is the right term, right, for this whole system that we put these people through, right?
Can you imagine? Does anyone know? I'm just putting this out to anyone. Has anyone talked to any local journalists, any activists, talked to a human being who had their stuff before their eyes put in storage and managed to get it back? I know that wasn't even happening today. Today was just a garbage truck. But I know at least a couple times they have had a truck that they've loaded shit into theoretically to go into storage. But is it actually any different? Has anyone managed to get their shit back? And why would that even happen? It doesn't even make sense. No. It's just I don't know.
Just the controlling aspect of the state. And I will say in my almost 6 months at Real Change I've never heard of that case. So
okay. I am not surprised.
Yeah.
Because if you break this all down, what is happening here? It seems pretty clear the intention is just to scatter people to the winds, right?
If we just disappear all of them, then we don't have to think about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you were to, psychologize or speculate, what's the goal? We know that they're not going to not be homeless after you throw all their shit away, right? On some level, they have to know that even when you scatter if you scatter them, they're just going to be homeless somewhere else, right? But probably still in the city. What is even the goal?
I grapple with this question all the time. And I don't even think I have an answer. I think it really just boils down to the fact that, it's all power play. The police, the state, they love having this control, this ability to terrorize, to inflict violence upon these communities that they've made vulnerable already, susceptible to their violence. I think that when you put these people in positions of power, that they're obviously going to abuse them. And so I can't think of anything more, just every single time I'm interacting with officers at either rallies, actions, or, sweeps like these, I always question, what is it? What would it take to just get you out of that uniform? Why are you doing this? And I think that's what I come back to is just, it's the power.
Well, I think, that's sort of an interesting point too. One, Yeah, and I mean, I think for police in particular, it's cruelty for cruelty's sake for them. But I mean, one of the interesting things is, very, very soon, and we've already seen all the editorials calling for it, the city and the state and the county budgets are all going to be cut to the bone, right? And we're going to cut all the services, what little services are going to homeless people are going to be cut.
Brian, are they going to cut the cops' budget?
The police budget is almost certainly going to go up, right? And it is this interesting thing of, is there just any situation where we could live in a world where we could just say, hey, maybe having 50 cops just to harass a 50-person patrol of cops just to harass homeless people every morning is a waste of money. Like, when does that time come? We say maybe we have too many fucking cops.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I hope that time fucking comes soon, but it doesn't. In this city, it doesn't seem like it's going to come anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, in this city or anywhere. I mean, I think what you nailed is that this is all part of a larger structures of control and state violence for the purpose of oppressing people. And and that is, these are the systems that allow the cops to exist and be funded the way they are, for the media to for the local media to talk about it the way they do. But there's almost something more. Or there's a specific element when you look at like this city's governance by your technocratic, like liberal shithead class. That is, I mean, we can talk about the cops all we want, but ultimately this is coming from City Hall, and these are Democrats we're talking about. And in progressive Seattle, and I think at the end of the day, for them, this is basically like a PR win of a kind, because all they're seeing, to me, if I'm going to get in their heads, is like when these encampments grow to a concentration where they're an eyesore enough, because it's about aesthetics for your cosmopolitan liberal, then they just have to scatter it. The fact that they're all going to still be in the city, that the problem certainly hasn't been solved, that people are harassed, that they're just going to go other places, these houseless people, it's fine. The concentration has been diminished for some period of time, so that and they've shown to the sort of like the small business class, look, we're using the agents of the state to affect this change. We're being rough on these people. Because I think to your like right wing small business asshole, like seeing that they're being terrorized, to them they think that if you're a right winger, you think that's a solution, right? If you think, because of the way you think about humanity as needing like discipline, you think if we are terrorizing these people, they will go away somewhere else, or they'll get their shit together and stop being homeless or something. Or it's the fact that if we weren't terrorizing people, more people would be homeless and addicted or whatever. And so to the Democrats in office here, it's like you have to appease that mentality and show, look, we're kicking ass. We're busting heads,
Oh yeah, totally. No, you definitely hit it on the nail with the optics and the PR. I mean, and this is something that I've been really upset about too, just like seeing the ways that a lot of the Asian businesses in the CID have advocated for these sweeps to be happening, and so just like grappling that tension of like, how are we, trying to support local businesses, like the ones that have been really impacted by racism at this time, while they're actively, and gentrification, while like, a lot of these small business owners are at the same time perpetuating the anti-Blackness and the racism, like criminalizing poverty, just like in their own neighborhoods, in our neighborhoods. And so, it's definitely just, an uphill battle. And, just the whole idea of sweeping encampments and then taking these nice, like pretty pictures of the streets or whatever that they do for their blogs or their Twitter accounts after.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that sort of the class aspect of it is interesting in the way it's sort of interacting with this pandemic. I mean, I think Greg has been the big proponent on this show of the theory that the pandemic is basically just going to be used to wipe out all the poor people in America. But it is like, I mean,
it's already started. Yeah.
Like, that seems to be the official policy. I mean, they tell everyone with a professional class job is making $100,000 or more, please stay at home, please wear masks. Everybody else, fend for yourself, motherfuckers, right? And
the trademark phrase is a genocide of the poor and marginalized. That's what we're about to live through.
I mean, America's all about genocide, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to find this. Yeah, every system in this country is primed for a situation like this to just be taken out and acted on whatever groups of people, whatever communities are the least powerful. And so that means the least wealthy and least white and whatever other communities in this country are the most marginalized are just going to be ground into fucking dust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think, to sort of maybe bring that to the street level a little bit too. I mean, I think you can sort of speak to this a little bit. If you have, again, the sort of armed agents of the state just chasing around homeless people, and we know that in these encampment sweeps too. I mean, they've fucking killed people in the encampment sweeps too. When they're doing this, right, we're in the middle of a pandemic. You scatter these people away. If you are homeless and this is happening to you and this is a constant state of affairs for you, I mean, there has to be like a bit of an intimidation factor if you do get sick about going to a hospital or something like that, going to one of these places, right, where, you could be essentially swept again, right? I mean, you have to have a certain, I guess, fear of interacting with potential, agents of the state, which I mean could only exacerbate, any, amount of like COVID in the homeless community. I mean, your sort of thoughts on that, I guess.
I mean, yeah. I think to put like a tangible example to that, the first thing that came to mind was how, at Real Change pre-COVID, we would have medical vans, like community medics folks come in and do like free examinations, free shots, free, vaccinations for folks who are our vendors. And oftentimes, regardless of the fact that it's free, required no documentation at all, people would be extremely scared. And like a lot of them would refuse to have these services, even though just like objectively speaking, we know that it would be and could be beneficial. And so, just the trauma and the impact of living outside every single day, not knowing where you're going to get your next meal, it really takes a huge mental toll. And I think that that's something that, I mean, it's certainly in discourse a lot more now, but just in general, the impact and the trauma that transience has on someone's ability to maintain relationships. And this goes for just like, not even just person to person, but with social workers, with caseworkers. It makes it that much more difficult,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, when you get these sort of particular like suburban, conservatives or whatever, and they're like, Seattle offers all these services and the homeless don't take it or whatever. This is the part that's never communicated, right? That even if we assume the service is being offered were good, even if we assume that there was enough, right? All that kind of stuff, you've built in a suspicion and reluctance to accept those because every interaction that 99% of the interactions they're having with the state involve a guy with a gun threatening them.
Yeah.
Well, the services that are offered are basically that exactly for that purpose. It's a poison pill, right? It's like it's like when you do the dishes really poorly, so you're never asked to do it again.
This Greg is definitely not speaking from his own experience.
I actually like doing housework. Thank you. I keep a clean galley. But I mean, it's that the little bit of services that we do provide, at least some portion of it, serves this political PR purpose of being able to, on the one hand, say, look, we're doing something. On the other hand, say, look, these people aren't accepting this help we're giving them. And, it's like, if the help sucks, then people aren't going to take it. I mean, if you've got a family or a dog or just possessions, you can't go to a shelter. Like, I mean, that's just where it starts. And I'd be terrified of getting COVID-19 in a shelter during this time. I mean, it's very obvious to anyone like that you're safer like on the street from that. These, if you're again, like we know whatever shortage of medical care there is at any time during this pandemic, it's not fucking rich people who are going to feel that. It's these people. And you got to, you don't live in a society where if you're living on the street in America, you're not thinking to yourself, well, at least if I come down, with this pandemic disease, I'll have just as much chance as anyone else to survive it. You're not thinking that. No, I mean, you're going to be somehow you are going to get the worst end of this. So, Evelyn, were you able to talk to any of the residents there as they were either before it was blocked off or as they were being rustled out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like just before there was an opportunity for me, and it was, they were just very passing interactions, just because people were rushing to try and get their stuff out before they didn't even let them back in after through the barricades. But we did hear from one person who was offered a voucher to First Presbyterian, which is one of the shelters that they were trying to direct folks to. Again, just on my end, I don't know if it has been de-intensified yet. And so there was just, there was no, I guess, optimism there.
Tell us about the de-intensification. Like, what does that entail at one of these shelters?
Basically, it just means like implementing the CDC guidelines for safety. So, just having the mats or the cots spread 6 feet apart. You just being in compliance with CDC guidelines.
Does that mean diminished capacity?
Yeah, it does, to my understanding. And at the same time, it's like there's so many moving pieces. Yeah.
And I think, this issue came up. I know that Erica Burnett had written about it on her thing, but this, they reduced capacity in the shelters, and they took beds that were in, one shelter and would move them over to another building, right? So maybe you have 100 beds in one shelter, you take 50 out, put it in another building. And then what the mayor apparently did was just counted the beds in the new building as new beds, right?
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, to the point that the mayor, like, literally just through, counting wrong, like, tripled the amount of shelter beds in the city.
Those are new beds.
Yeah.
Putting out really false numbers, yeah.
Yeah, which I think says one of two things, which is either the mayor is purposefully lying to be deceiving, or I think actually more likely cares so fucking little about fucking homeless people, just doesn't give a shit. Just, as she was like taking a shit and drinking coffee, like looked at the numbers like, triple, as she's tweeting,
There we go.
When everything is
neither
PR,
being good.
The only filter is PR.
Yeah.
Then that's an obvious move.
We see the same thing happening right before they do the one night count every single year. They'll just do huge sweeps of every single area. They know there's a major encampment, and then be like, oh, look, our numbers are down. We're doing great. No, you actually just pushed everyone out of the fucking city.
Yeah. Or scattered them so they can't be found.
Yeah.
Or do the one night count, in the middle of winter, right? So, there's all these sort of little tricks. And it's sort of astounding to live in a society where apparently all our web browsers are being watched at all times. And, there's so much data, but apparently, how many homeless people one of the richest cities on the planet has in it is an unknowable number. Like, you just can't, it's impossible.
Yep.
Any other stories you want to relay about this morning to us today?
I know you just cited Erica C. Barnett earlier. I think, she was doing really good reporting earlier about how these cops are getting paid overtime to be at these sweeps. Again, there were 50 cops. Yeah, like tens of thousands of dollars, I think was the numbers from her reporting. And as we've seen from and just know from experience, like they literally are told not to engage with the public. And so they form this huge barricade, this barrier with the metal bars and then their bikes, and then they stand behind them. Sometimes they're just like not even facing us, but if they are and we try to engage, they're just told like, we're not going to answer that. We can't answer that. And so just the lack of transparency. Again, we knew this was always a problem with the Seattle Police Department and every police department ever. But yeah, that was just extremely, extremely upsetting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is the sort of standard issue thing with the police, right? This idea of just an open hostility towards a significant portion of the city's population. And it's fucking disgusting. But this is what are the police doing right now? This is what they're doing.
Yeah. Right now they're getting paid $70K, just sitting around having fun.
And signing up to volunteering for overtime to harass homeless people.
To be fair, they used to, when they would do, I know when they do the Mayday stuff and when they used to do the like BLM things, they also would all pull from the overtime pool. And I remember you'd always get one or two cops that would derisively thank people for, buying them a new car and things like that. I mean, and it's astonishing. I mean, like for being a profession that requires like no fucking intelligence and just basically to be breathing. We brought this up before. Like, it's an extremely high paying job. Like, starting in Seattle, I believe the last time I checked, they were making about 110 a year starting. I mean, so an absolute parasite on the fucking
according
city.
to the city, we're also in like a cop shortage, right? According to SPD.
Yeah, because we only have 10,000 of them in the city. So
if you think about it, like they need to call in overtime for this because that's a manpower problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like to do this, they need to bring in overtime costs. What that means is, I mean, it's because they have so many fucking cops on regular hours just on the beat, just swarming the fucking city, just like on every fucking block, 8 cruisers responding to any incident, so it's not just that these guys are making money, it's that we're so saturated by police presence. Obviously some neighborhoods more than others. Oh God. So do you have a sense, Evelyn, about like how many people from the community, I get, whatever, just people locally or activists, journalists, whatever, like showed up to be there this morning?
Yeah, I think at one point we counted about 24.
Okay.
Yeah, we had like quite a good amount of folks show up to today's. I know that yesterday's at 8th and King was a little less attended, but there was also shorter notice about that. So yeah, I think it was really cool to see as many people who were able to come out today come out. And then just like the coordination amongst all the different media, community media that we were trying to do to bring awareness. I mean, again, people have been aware, we've been aware, but, just especially now during a global fucking pandemic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Solidarity with everybody who came out there. Thank you for being there, everyone. It's important. I mean, even if to bear witness, at least it's something.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the most engagement that I've seen in recent times, at least on just footage and content about the sweeps happening, because we had so many like larger influencers there who were able to like document, be questioning like on live. So yeah, I'm really thankful for that.
Well, it's tough because I think, like you said earlier, all the usual suspects have been allowed to tell the story, right? So the Seattle Times gets to get in there. We know what their opinion is, right? I'm sure, the local news networks, Como and whatever, got to get in there. We know their opinion on it. And so it's actually important that, people like yourself, people like Day or whatever actually go. And even though the police are going to actively try and prevent you from talking to people and stuff, to actually show what's happening, because I mean, this is the balance of forces right now. We have, a major TV network that reaches, however many thousands of houses, that literally runs documentaries that their whole thing is like, hey, what about concentration camps, right? Like that's their solution. And on the other side of it is people who are willing to get up and go out in the rain and I guess just be on Twitter, like that seems to be the balance right now.
Yeah, unpaid too at that.
Yeah, unpaid. Yeah, not enjoying very cushy. Again, only job easier than being a cop is being on TV news. So but yeah, I mean, just really unbelievable. So
yeah. So thank you, solidarity to all those people and all the residents who were rustled out of their only homes this morning. Evelyn, is there anything you want to talk about as terms of like what? How people can, first of all, maybe be aware, tune into sweeps like this in the future to show up, or other ways they can get involved in advocacy like this, or just solidarity with our houseless neighbors?
Honestly, I'm still trying to figure out how to find out when these things are happening. So it's, I would say, just follow all these community media accounts, people who have been doing the work on the ground, obviously Erica C. Barnett, Day, Nikita, Oliver, all the folks from activist class, really. Keep following. And then at the same time, there is legislation that's attempting to be put through from the city council. Thank you to Councilmember Morales and Sawant's ordinance. And if there's something that has actually given me hope during this time in COVID, it's just seeing the amount of people, community members who have come through to support our Real Change vendors. It's just been really like one of the few heartwarming things that can bring me joy throughout my days when we go into the office, is just seeing how much money and resources folks are directing to our organization, and I'm hoping others as well. Whether it's, we've gotten like thousands of mask donations, lots of food. We're doing grocery distributions right now for folks living both inside and outside, and just separating those depending on what people have access to, like a stove with, hot water or can openers, things like that. And so, just like really trying to support your local organizations and people are doing the work right now. Parasol with the COVID-19 mutual aid networks, like that's wild. They have like thousands of volunteers, and so that's something that I would, if we're going to end on like a positive note, which I always like to do, then that's something I'd like to shout out for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll link to all that because in Real Change, like actual on street vending is pretty much still is shut down, right?
Yeah, it is.
So we will link to Real Change, and we'll link to where you can donate for that to help out that community of vendors and that publication.
That'd be great. There's like we have a tiny URL. So it's just tinyurl.com/Venmo vendor. A lot of our vendors, they have spots that they sell in specifically, and we list those spots on that site there. And so they're regulars.
So get connect up with your paper vendor. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, and it is an interesting thing. I mean, like the QFC by my house has a Real Change vendor that's been there for, I don't know, years at this point. And you do like create like a relationship, right? This person you see all the time.
Yeah.
So hopefully people can reach out. And the thing is, like, particularly if you want to read your news on printed on paper, Real Change is like they actually even covers like homeless issues at all, which is a real crime and just another statement of how shitty the Seattle Times is. But
certainly,
pretty fucking ridiculous. But yeah.
Yeah. To bring it back to that positive note, there are lots of things that you can do. Getting involved with these organizations, donating to Real Change. And hey, you know what? Showing up and just being there in solidarity with your community and especially your houseless neighbors if the next inevitable time soon when the city, pulls this shit again. Thank you again, Evelyn. This has been really depressing but enlightening. And, thank you for the work you're doing.
Yeah, of course. And thank you all for again, giving me this platform and having me on the show here. Seattle sucks, but we love it, right?
Yeah. It's day to day, but thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg. Okay. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks again to Evelyn. Thanks for listening, everybody. Check out the links to those orgs in the description. I don't know. It's what can we do but talk about this shit and get it out there. I don't know.
Yeah. It's important that I guess at least that people are aware that it's happening and all these sort of things. So obviously another just wonderful downer. Yes, as is now just the custom on the show. I guess we could have
it's getting harder and harder to laugh about how shitty everything is, because that was our shtick for a long time. Nothing funny about this shit.
Yeah.
This is just like a slow rolling Holocaust. Like,
yeah, the moral of the story is never know about anything.
Yeah.
But to quote our fallen leader, Colin, who is still in the quarantine of the mind that is fatherhood. Wow, that sucks.
He doesn't know what day it is, what hour it is. He doesn't know if the sun is up or down right now.
Yeah. All right. That sucked.
You think your vision is fogged from wearing a mask under your glasses? Like, he can't see straight, period.
Yeah. Yep. Hopefully he'll be back soon. I don't know. How long does it take a child to reach maturity?
Oh, God. All right.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.